Hey guys, it's Julie Malolo again. I'm a life coach in Manhattan, and again, I'm talking about narcissism. This is not what I do in my coaching, but I just think it's a really interesting topic. It's something that I've studied for a long time, and everything that I say here is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is what psychologists agree with, but this is like my real world on the street version of what I think this is about because I've studied this for a really, really long time. And there's definitely a difference between what they tell you in books and then how it plays out in reality. But again, this is all my opinion, and I don't use any of this in my life coaching because coaching is working with healthy people. But if you do want coaching, my website is yourdreamslifecoach.com and you can fill out the contact form. So, why do narcissists pretend to be empathetic, or are they actually empathetic? There's two questions right there. And also, in this video, I'm going to be talking about how narcissists react when someone has emotional or physical pain and how that can actually enrage them, or they can appear to be empathetic, but they're really not. That'll be the second part. Okay, so narcissists have this is an empathy scale that I just drew. Okay, so this would be a non narcissist who has fully working empathy. This would be the continuum. We have a snake here, so it's sort of like a reptilian brain, and then I have a rock, which would be the end of that continuum. A rock isn't alive, and there are some people that are borderline not alive in terms of how their brain is working. So a narcissist is never going to be here, but they could be really anywhere else along this continuum as far as having a flicker of empathy. They're never going to have a lot of it. And sociopaths also. And that's a whole other video, sociopath versus narcissist. There's a lot of misconceptions about that. You can have someone with an overlap there, but for the most part, they are separate. And I'm just talking about narcissists in this video here. So most of the time when you think of like a rock, that's more sociopath. A snake, I would say, is more narcissist. Definitely not over here. So what you see sometimes, isn't it just a cute snake though? Even though it's a narcissist snake, it's still cute. Okay. So sometimes what you see that is so confusing is you see a narcissist that has a flicker of empathy. And how do you know that that's there? They have some guilt. And this is pretty common. Lots of narcissists have some guilt. And when they have guilt, what do? They try to talk themselves out of it. They try to blame other people. They try to rationalize. And they will go on these long monologues trying to convince you that they didn't do anything wrong, but they're really trying to convince themselves they didn't do anything wrong. But the reason that they're doing that is because they have that flicker of empathy. It's like a light bulb that's just flicker, flicker. That's how the empathy part of their brain is working in people that have a little bit of that empathy. It bothers them a lot because on some level they know they did something really bad. On the other level, they have a narcissist brain, so they don't really care, and they're trying to reconcile those two things. So you might hear a long conversation about, well, I know that I stole her boyfriend, but it doesn't matter though, because blah, blah, blah. Or she should have known that I'm the type of person who would steal her boyfriend, so it's really her fault, blah, blah, blah. And what they really are trying to get you to do is agree with them so that they can get that guilt to quiet down. In a normal person, guilt is a healthy thing and it's there to alert you that you've done something morally or ethically wrong, and then you want to reconcile and you want to go and apologize and make it right, correct your mistakes. That's in a normal brain. A narc brain can't do that though, because you have the ego driving the bus. The ego is saying, I'm always right, you're always wrong. So it's like this disconnect. So when they have that flicker of empathy, it's actually pretty painful for them, for the narcissist, because they know they're doing something wrong that feels bad, but they don't have the ability to like apologize, make it right, the things that a normal person would do, because their brain is lacking so much of the empathy part. and the critical thinking part, that they can't make sense of it. And then, of course, just the way the disorder works, they're protecting themselves from reality at any cost, even if that cost is harming other people, which that is the cost of narcissism. It is a disorder that harms other people, unfortunately. So when you see a narcissist that is just going on this tirade, this rampage of, but no, it's really not that bad that I did this. You have to see this. You have to agree with me. And they're desperate to get you to agree with them. They're doing that because they have this huge fear that, ooh, maybe they are a horrible, bad person. Maybe they do hate themselves. Maybe they've built a house of cards that's ready to collapse and they can't face that. So they have to put their head back in the sand, and you're going to be part of that because they need the people around them to lie to them. Like the emperor has no clothes kind of narratives. They're always constructing narratives and trying to force them on you, trying to force you to agree with those narratives. That's what narcissists do, and you also see that in the media a ton. So that tells me there are probably people that are narcissists who are working in positions that are making decisions around that. Now, I don't know who, I can't name names because I don't know anything about that, but that's the type of thing that narcissists do. They build the narrative and then they try to force it on you and say, it's not that I'm a bad person, it's that she should have known that I would steal her boyfriend. And that was so stupid of her. And people have to take more personal responsibility for not letting their boyfriends cheat. That's the kind of just BS. Completely, I just made that up, but that's exactly the kind of thing that they would tell you. It's manipulative, it's misconstrued, it's just wrong, it's ethically wrong, it's morally wrong, it's a lie. That's what a narrative is, from a narcissist. So, but when you see that, there's somewhere in here, because if they are pure rock, like a sociopath, and there's just zero empathy, they don't need to do that song and dance. It's just like, yeah, I stole your boyfriend, so what? Who cares? I don't need to justify that to anyone because I'm a sociopath. I am a rock. I'm barely alive. That is how a sociopath is. I mean, I'm not going to go into the full differences between soc and narc right now, but just I wanted to put the rock there so it kind of made a little bit more sense. So you don't hear sociopaths justifying and trying to convince you that no, I was just, the only time that sociopaths do that is if they're in danger of losing something that they want. Narcs do that too, but socs do that fully knowing that what they did was wrong and that they just don't care. Narcs really are bothered by what they did so long as they're not also a sociopath. When a narc has any flicker of empathy, it really, really bothers them to think of what they did. And that's why they are desperate to convince you of their narrative that they did nothing wrong. You're not going to see that out of a sociopath. Sociopath is either going to say, yeah, I stole your boyfriend. Yeah, so what? Why do I care? Or if, let's say, you're going to stab them with a knife, they might then tell you a song and dance to get out of being stabbed with a knife. They might say, oh yeah, that was wrong. No, I'm so sorry. A sociopath might say something like that simply for that one-time objective to get out of it, to get out of being stabbed, or to get out of maybe being fired from their job or whatever. They know exactly what to say. They know to say, oh, what I did was wrong. They know all of that. But that's the only time. If you get them away and you're like, hey, sociopath, what do you really think about that? They're going to tell you, oh, I don't really give a damn. No, I just said that to get out of that situation. Now, a narcissist is going to be more confused because they have a flicker of empathy, a huge cognitive dissonance conflict going on between them because they, on some gut level, know this is wrong so long as they have that flicker of empathy, and they have to get that bad feeling to go away. And they're going to blame you for that bad feeling and try to force you to convince them that what they did was just fine. There's nothing wrong with stealing someone's boyfriend and lying and cheating. That's totally fine, right? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with them. So that explains a little bit of what's going on as far as the narc flicker of empathy. Now, it's not real empathy, though. I want to make that clear. I mean, if you're going to categorize it, they don't have empathy. Like, if you have a flicker of feeling in your arm is still paralyzed, okay? But you might have just a little flicker of feeling, but it's still paralyzed. You can't move it. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Narcissists don't have empathy. It's not that, oh, they're just a normal person. No, they're not. They have a different brain where it's like a limb doesn't work. Part of their brain is not working. Part of their brain is not lighting up. Actually, several parts of their brain are not lighting up, and that's why they all are the same. That's why they have the same behaviors and actions and things that they do, regardless of what country they're from, what language they speak. You know, people wonder, like, how do they all do the same thing? Well, they have the same brain. Not the identical same brain. We have our unique aspects of our personality, but they have a narc brain that parts don't work. Okay, so the other thing that's confusing to people is, well, at times they seem really empathetic. They really genuinely seem to care at certain times, and they do, but it's not empathy. Let me explain what happens there. So let's say you've had something bad happen to you, and you get what seems like an empathetic response from that narc. Most of the time, what you are getting is the narc is thinking of themselves in that situation. And this just might happen by luck to be something that they think is bad. Okay, so for example, if a narc has been fired and they felt horrible about that, they remember the pain of that, and they thought it was just so unfair and it was a witch hunt and it was terrible, and then you were fired, because they have a narrative in their mind already. Being fired is awful. It's always just a witch hunt. It's never the person's fault because it wasn't my fault. This is just one option. Narcs can see this differently, by the way. Then you get fired. They might say, oh no, that's terrible. Oh my God, that's the worst. That almost destroyed me when I got fired. And it might really sound like empathy, but it's not empathy, because empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. What narcissists do is they put themselves in someone else's shoes. That's not empathy. Empathy is when you are able to understand how someone else feels in their own shoes, not your shoes. So I'm not putting my high heels on some man and saying, get your foot in there. I'm saying, well, in your sneakers, 6'5" overweight man, I understand your struggles, even though I'm wearing 4-inch heels that are not going to fit you because they're way too small. Weird example, but that's the difference. So instead of understanding this person is different than me, they have different shoes than me, I'm going to try to sit back and understand what they're telling me objectively, which is real empathy. Empathy is just seeing what's there, and living in reality. Narcs can't live in reality. That's a big reason they can't have empathy. Instead of doing that, the narc says, well, I would feel this way in this situation. So let me give you an example. You lose your job and this narc has never been fired. They might say, well, that's your own curse word fault, because I would never let that happen and you must have done something wrong. And so it's not that the narc has empathy, it's just that they're putting themselves in that situation, and then they're basically talking to themselves and regurgitating the same tired narratives. Narcissists replay these narratives again and again and again. So you will hear the same thing. Oh, anyone who's lost their job, they're just a lazy piece of... One narc might say that, right? Another narc might say, anyone who's lost their job has had a horrible witch hunt against them, and it's an injustice, and it's terrible, and I'm sure it was never their fault. And of course, these are just, they're you know what they are. They're not true. I almost said a bad word. They are not true. All the narratives are not true. Now, they might occasionally hit on something that happens to be true, like by chance, but most of the time their narratives are not true. and they are superimposing that narrative onto you. They're not seeing you, they're seeing themselves. So when you're upset you lost your job, they're not listening to you. They're not listening to like what happened and how you feel and what are you going to do about it, and they don't care. They're not listening to any of that. They're replaying their regurgitated audio cassette in their head about their narrative. What does it mean to be fired? Oh, it means that person's always lazy. It means it was always a witch hunt. And they just kind of superimpose that over. So their response to you is not about you. They're not even listening to you. Okay, so that's the reason why sometimes it really seems like they have empathy, but it's not for you. It's for themselves, if anything, because they're supporting their narrative, whatever it is. Another reason that narcs can seem like they have empathy is it might just be a lie because they want something. And the thing about narcs is when they lie, a lot of the time they don't really realize that they're lying. I know this is debated, and most people would disagree with this, but from what I've seen, they go to such lengths, they go to such an extent to convince themselves that what they're saying is true, that by the end, they pretty much have convinced themselves that it's true, and they double down on that. So, yeah, that's one reason that can happen because, yeah, it's just a very weird brain. Like, it's hard to totally put it in words, but I want to try because I just think there's so many misconceptions out there about how it's working. So yeah, so when they're lying because they want something, I mean, yeah, there's times that they know that they're lying, and those are the times that they'll often brag about it. You know, like, oh, I told the guy at the hotel that I have 6 orphan children I'm taking care of, so he'd give me a better room. Isn't that amazing that I did that? And I lied and I got this huge room with a hot tub for free. Aren't I amazing? Sometimes they will consciously lie like that, but that's a situation that hasn't really triggered any guilt at all. But if someone says to them, oh my God, you're a terrible person. How could you do that? How could you lie about orphan children? What's wrong with you? And then their guilt is triggered, then they will go on a narrative rampage. Oh, well, I could have 6 orphan children though. What, you think I'm not the kind of person who would have orphan children? How dare you accuse me of that? You know, and then they'll just go on this rampage to the point that they will have convinced themselves that what they did was okay. So I know I'm telling you a couple opposing things here, but it's just how their brain works. So at times they will consciously know they're lying. Okay, this is someone I want to kiss up to because I want a promotion. So, oh, hello. Oh, I love your dress. And oh no, you got a parking ticket. That is that's terrible. And that's one thing you'll notice with the narc empathy. It is overly dramatic. The expressions are too big. It comes across as just like, what are you doing? Why are you being so fake? But that's what they do. Oh no. Oh my God. It's terrible. You got a parking ticket. Oh, like that kind of overdramatic thing. You'll see that with narcs because when you don't have regular empathy, think about it. You have to fake it because you don't know how to use something and you're trying to use it. So it's like imagine if you were pretending to type. Right? You wouldn't know what you were doing, so it might be a little more exaggerated than if you were just really typing. That's a weird example again, but and the other situation is so they can lie to you, know they're lying to you, or they can lie to you and not know they're lying to you because they've gotten so confused in their messed up brain that doesn't have critical thinking skills, doesn't have empathy, needs to justify everything they're doing to their own ego. So that's a very confusing place to be. And at times they can be not empathetic to you. And basically justify it as, well, that's okay because I get to do whatever I want because, going back to I stole your boyfriend, but that's fine because I get to do that. So really whatever they do, you can kind of go to the root and get an idea what's going on. But yeah, most of the time, if you experience this with an arc where you're like, wow, they really seem to care about me, they really seemed to care about my feelings, you're probably dealing with one of these things where either it was a lie, they knew it was a lie, they just needed something from you, or it was a lie, but they convinced themselves it was true because they still had you on a pedestal in stage one. Stage one, you can do no wrong. So whatever happens in stage one, oh, you got fired. Oh, but I'm sure it was just this blah other thing, and it wasn't you, and that's the kind of thing where they're convincing themselves and they really believe it. But if they just need to kiss up to you, it might be like, oh, I'm sure that wasn't your fault. No, I'm sure it was fine. Over exaggerated expressions and all that. Or they're projecting and they're just superimposing their false narrative onto you and your situation. So it's not even about you, it's a conversation between them and them. You're not even in the room. They're talking to themselves and they're trying to make themselves feel better about whatever their own past situation was, whether that is to say, oh, I'm empathetic fakely, and that's terrible to ever be fired. I'm sure it wasn't your fault. Or whether they say, you must be a terrible employee. I hate you. I hate lazy people like you. Whatever that reaction is, it's just a conversation between themselves and themselves. It has nothing to do with you. So that's an important thing to remember. And now moving into the second part of this, which is why do some narcissists go into a rage when people are emotionally hurt or physically hurt around them? It's a very weird reaction because if you have empathy, when you see someone who's hurt or emotionally hurt, you feel like, oh, this is bad. And you can see like the expression on their face. You can kind of see like, oh, wow, looks like they're in pain. Or, you can read their facial expressions and accurately at least take a guess at what that person's feeling because you have empathy, right? Narcissists can't do that. So, and this isn't every time. Like I said, they could react with this fake empathy based on all the things I just talked about. But some of the time, let's say someone gets hurt and they break a bone. Let's say someone gets dumped and their feelings are hurt. There are a lot of narcissists that will actually go into a rage when they see this other person's pain. And it's a weird combination of things. It's like, well, for number one, they don't have the empathy, right? At most, they have a flicker. So they really just don't care that this person's in pain, emotional or physical. The second thing, beyond not having empathy and not caring, like where does the anger come from? They are really annoyed when other people have any kind of need, whether that need is emotional, physical, someone's thirsty, someone's on fire, and they need to have a fire put out. They don't care. It's annoying to them. I mean, just imagine that you had no empathy and you really didn't care if someone else was in pain, and then people are constantly coming to you with, oh, my leg fell off, I'm on fire, I just got dumped, I just got fired, I need someone as a shoulder to lean on. To them, it's just annoying. It's like, ugh, just don't concern me with you and your feelings and your needs. It's just, it's annoying, it's icky, ugh. That's the reaction that narcissists have to other people's problems. So some of them just put up a wall and coldly block it out. Others will actually get angry at the person because they just don't care and they don't want to deal with it. On top of that, when people have an expectation that they should care that this person's on fire and why don't you, sometimes they go into a rage, partly just because they're annoyed, partly because it reminds them, wow, I'm a cold person who just doesn't really care at all. And this little flicker of that comes into their awareness like, this is something everyone else seems to care. This person's on fire and I don't. Ooh, maybe that means I'm a really bad, scary monster. That's a bad thing to think. That scares me. So I'm going to now take those bad feelings and put them onto that person. And I'm going to yell and scream at them, which is the weirdest thing that you can witness is when you see someone who is a victim of something, like they're on fire, they've been attacked by a wild dog, they're in terrible emotional pain, maybe they've just gotten cheated on or fired or whatever it is. They're distraught, and then they bring this to a narcissist who rages at them. The weirdest thing. But that's really what we're looking at. We're looking at a lack of empathy. Either the sociopath is the rock, the narcissist is the snake, and we might have a little flicker of that light bulb. But they don't have the empathy to just naturally care and naturally know, not only to know how to help, but to want to help, to want to let that person know, hey, I see you, I see your pain, I care, I don't want you to be in pain, let's figure this out. That's really a lot of what we're doing in empathy that they're not able to do because they don't see reality. Okay, reality is a funhouse mirror to narcissists. So when they see the person on fire, it's like partly they see reality, and then they see their projections and their illusions and their false narratives and the lies they tell themselves, the lies everyone else tells them. And that becomes a weird blur that instead of just helping the person, they get very confused. So narcissists are confused most of the time. They're confused, they're angry, they're jealous, they're bitter, they're empty, they're bored. So if you start feeling jealous, like, oh, this narcissist has it so easy, they have the life of an actor who's pretending to have things easy, but who doesn't because their brain doesn't work right. I mean, think about that. They're trying to live life with this brain when we're meant to have this. And this is another reason that they are so angry and bitter and jealous. They'll never admit it fully to themselves. They'd probably explode if they did. They want this. They can't have it. Even though it's much more painful to live life and to be empathetic because you see everything, you feel everything, you don't have those ego defenses. The narcissist has those walls, but it's like there's something within the walls. There's no real love in there. There's no empathy in there. And on some level, they can see other people have something that they don't, something that they can never have. And that pisses them off. And sociopaths, same thing. So they put their energy into looking like they don't care, looking like they have the perfect life, but it is something that is so sad and will eat at them. And even though narcissists are annoying, obnoxious, very harmful, very abusive to all the people around them, they have a brain that doesn't work. And it's not actually their fault that they have this faulty brain. It's most likely, in my opinion, the fault of toxins or chemicals that have destroyed those parts of the brain. Can those parts come back? I don't know. We don't have any way to do it now. I would like to see research to see if we can heal those parts of the brain because we've proven that brains can heal and there might be ways to heal those parts, whether it's heavy metals stuck in there, food chemicals stuck in there, I don't know. Something is stuck in those parts of the brain that is keeping them from working. So I think there's a lot of hope for over time improving narcissism. There may even be hope for narcissists that are alive right now, possibly. So it's a double-edged sword. They do really horrible things to other people just by the way that they exist, and that's not okay. A lot of that stuff is illegal, it's immoral and unethical, it's terrible, it's abusive, but they also don't choose that brain. It's just the brain that they have. It's like they're paralyzed in one leg, and they were born that way. But instead of just being paralyzed, it doesn't harm anyone. It's like they have a leg that's covered in spikes and they're kicking everybody with it. Just when they walk down the street, they're just causing destruction. So I know that's a lot of different issues right there, but that it's complex, right? Because their brain is complex, and I think that gets left out of a lot of the things that I see out there. The books and articles and videos kind of leave some of that out, the complexity that's going on in their brain. And it's not good. And man, some of the stuff is just so obnoxious. It's like you can't even believe it. Like, really? Like, what? Huh? But when you step back and you really think about how their brain is actually missing certain parts, and that's keeping them from seeing that things aren't adding up, things don't make sense, and things are wrong. They're not able to get that objectivity because they're in this tornado of narcissism, false ideas. And that's what happens when you have the ego running the show. The ego is not consulting with the logical parts of the brain. The ego is not consulting with reality to make sure that both things match. They're just off on their rampage, their tornado, and they're desperate. Narcissists are absolutely desperate to get what they need, and what they need is attention. And what they need is an ego boost, or they need people to hate them, because either way they feel in control and they feel like they will live. But to a narcissist, it's very scary. They feel like they will actually die if they don't do these horrible things that they're doing. So it's a real problem that they're in. And it's not as simple as just, well, just stop doing that, which is what you'd say if you have empathy. Why don't you just not do that? And they must be lying because they can stop it sometimes. And it doesn't really work like that. It's not that they're always capable of stopping it. They're able to fake it sometimes, and like, how is this abusive person going to work and being super smiley and nice to everyone? They're doing that because their survival depends on it emotionally, to lie to those people and fake it, because otherwise, whatever it is to that is subjective, but to that narcissist, maybe their life depends on that income or that the attention they get at that job or whatever. But they really don't have much control over themselves. They really are like a little kid. Think of a little kid who's able to control themselves at brief moments in time. Like, they know they're going to get a cookie, so they can be quiet for like 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes. I want the cookie. That's a narcissist. So they can like hold this stuff in for brief moments in time. They can fake it. They can schmooze. They can lie to people and scheme and all that. They don't scheme as much as sociopaths, but they try to scheme. It's just not quite as effective with their tornado of untrue, half-truth, false narratives floating through their mind. But it's not that they're like an empathetic person who really is in control of what they're doing, who is in control of understanding reality, choosing their behaviors, understanding their thoughts and feelings. They're in a fun house with broken mirrors, and they're picking up shards of glass, like trying to make sense of it. That's a narcissist. Now, I'm not saying that to excuse what they do, because if you've had bad experiences with a narcissist, you have to get away from that. You have to protect yourself from being abused, definitely. I'm not telling you what to do. Go talk to a therapist if you need to figure something out as far as that. But it's not as simple as the narcissist is just doing this on purpose and they're evil and, they just want to be this way. They don't want to be this way. They don't have any other way to be because their brain is broken. That's a hard thing to get your head around if you have empathy and you don't think in these ways. But just like you look at someone who's autistic and you realize, like, we don't have the same brain, or our brain isn't working in the same way. Parts of that autistic brain are not functioning right. Parts are a flicker, parts are working, parts are not working. You don't really get mad at them for being autistic. You're just like, well, and sometimes they can control themselves, sometimes they can't. I would say a narcissist is very similar to that. The difference is the outer exterior looks like everyone else. So you hold them to the standard of someone who has a normal brain, but they don't have a normal brain. They have a hidden brain. And that's why it's dangerous, and that's why you should learn the signs to protect yourself. And if you have been harmed by a person like this, I think it's helpful to really understand how their brain works, because otherwise you just go in these loops of, oh, it was my fault, which is the most common thing. Especially codependent people will think, it was my fault. If they loved me more, they wouldn't have abused me. If I wasn't so boring, they wouldn't have abused me. That's not true. And it's a false narrative we have in society. We say things like, someone who loves you won't abuse you. That's not how that works. Someone abusive abuses everyone. It doesn't matter if they love them or hate them. They abuse everyone. That's the thing to get your head around. Someone who has empathy, who has a healthy, normal brain, they don't go around abusing anybody. They don't abuse people just because they don't love them. If you have empathy, you think Mr. Rogers is going to just, you know, cheat on all these women and just, shred their self-esteem just for fun simply because, oh, I just didn't love her, so I thought I could do that? No, that's not what you do if you have empathy. You do those things if you have a reptile brain, and you do those things to everybody. So I think that's the reason why, yes, it's important to move forward, but it's also important to understand what's happened as far as they don't have a normal brain, and you can't take that personally. That's a big message I just want to get out there, because people carry these false ideas like they didn't love me enough, or they didn't love me and that's why they treated me this way. And if this narcissist had liked me more or loved me more, if I was this, if I was that, they wouldn't have done this. They wouldn't have left me. They wouldn't have ignored me. They wouldn't have discarded me. It's not true. They will do that to everyone. And you might not see it. You might not see it on Facebook, but that relationship they're in, it's either going to end or it's going to go through cycles that are pedestal, discard, pedestal, discard, pedestal, discard. That's what they do. And they will do that to everyone. And if they stay with someone, that person has accepted that they're going to be treated terribly a lot of the time, if not most of the time. And that person often will have their own issues to where they have their own cycles going on, and maybe they can, it's never healthy, but like if they're both narcissists and they're both doing cycles like that, they can coexist that way. But if you're a healthy person, you have empathy, it's not going to work because you're not going to understand it. It's not going to be compatible. And I do want to say that narcissists can find compatible relationships. They're not healthy relationships, but they're compatible, especially when you have, a sociopath with a narcissist. Who's really getting hurt here? Does the snake care? Does the rock care? No. So these things in my mind are not a bad thing to have these people together, because they can have their needs met, and it's not healthy, but it works for them. But for empathetic people, if you're someone who is empathetic, you're not a flicker. You're not a snake or a rock. You have a heart. You care about people. You care about people's feelings all the time, not just because it suits your own narrative or whatever. You should find someone else like that because you deserve it. And you need to stop thinking that it was your fault, because it wasn't if you had an encounter with a snake or a rock. Someone else with a heart, it might not work out, it might not be perfect, but that person isn't going to do these same abusive things to you. They're not going to, just for their own amusement or their own ego needs, throw you under the bus just to see you cry. It's like, they're not going to push you down just to see you cry. You might get hurt with another empathetic person because that's just life, but they're not going to be taking any joy in your pain. That's for sure, and that's a big difference. Okay, so guys, I know I covered a lot of stuff, but it's important to me to put this info out there because I know so many people these days are struggling with this stuff because we just have so many narcissists these days. And again, that's why I think it's something in the environment that is causing parts of people's brains to just not work. It doesn't make sense otherwise. It can't be parenting because we're not having more children these days. We're having fewer children these days. So if it was bad parenting, we should be having fewer narcissists, not way, way more. Do you see how that doesn't make sense? I hope you can see that. I don't want to have to draw another picture. I don't even know how I would draw that. I hate drawing graphs and charts. I prefer to draw the diagrams like this. So if you guys really don't understand what I'm saying about you can't have more narcissists when you're having fewer children if it's parenting, if you don't get that, I will draw another index card. Maybe with a cuter animal, maybe with pandas or something, I don't know. Anyway, so as you guys know, I don't do coaching for, as far as therapy stuff, if you're needing therapy for, let's say you had a narcissist family, you had extreme abuse, that's all therapy stuff that you should go heal through therapy. But if you have a coaching issue, like you're wanting to work on your confidence in the present moment, and we won't really talk much about what happened back in childhood. We'll talk about what's happening now and what your goals are in the future, whatever area of your life that is, whether it's relationships. And you can have had a narcissist in your life to have coaching, so long as you're either in therapy or you've healed to the point that you can sort of think straight. That's the place you want to be. You want to be in an emotionally healthy place where like you can make good solid decisions for yourself. And that's important, because otherwise coaching doesn't work, because in coaching you're in the driver's seat. I'm more of almost like a project manager. I get everything out on the table, and then we organize it and we change the parts that aren't working and we choose new tasks. But you're the one in the driver's seat in coaching, and that doesn't work if you're in a place where you're not emotionally healthy. So if you're not sure about that, you can always go ask a therapist to let you know, in their opinion, if you are emotionally healthy. That's one way you can do it. But if you are interested in coaching, you can go to my website, yourdreamslifecoach.com, and you can fill out the contact form. Just tell me who you are, tell me what your situation is, why you're looking for coaching. Like maybe you want more confidence, maybe you are starting a business or changing careers or looking for a relationship or not sure if a relationship is right. It can also be things like finding your purpose in life, connecting with your passions, discovering your personality type strengths is something else I do. I have an assessment for that I use. And so yeah, yourdreamslifecoach.com. If you're interested in individual coaching, I do in-person sessions in the Upper East Side and over the web and internet everywhere else. And I don't do phone consults anymore, by the way. But do let me know your situation in the contact form box so that I can have an idea if it is a coaching type goal versus a consulting or a therapy or something that I just don't do, because I just don't want to waste your time. And then I'll send you all the rates and you can make your decision at that point. Okay guys, thank you for watching. I would appreciate it if this helped you, if you would like it, if you would comment, if you would let other people know. Share the video with people that have had a hard time with this stuff, because I really do think that it can help just to get your head around, like, this is a different brain than you have. This is a different brain, and you can't blame yourself for being bitten by a snake. You didn't do something wrong, or having a rock thrown at you. It's just, that's just what they do all the time, aside from the times that they're hiding it. And if you're empathetic, it's just not the same thing to you.